Hi everyone, I'm Allie Buchman, one of the founders of the Potomac Bead Company, and I am going to show you today how to do this Box bracelet. If you get a chance, you can also go to our store locations and actually take a class there. If you can't get there, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel as well as select to get updates from it, and then you will get new video notifications when we do updates to it and new ideas. We do a lot of product spotlights, so you can purchase in the stores or online as well to get some of these different materials. And I have a lot of fun making these videos for you guys and showing you the new products and how to use them as well. This video, we're going to be using one of those new products, and it is the QuadraTile. So the QuadraTile is a design that has 4 holes in it. And I'm going to pour it out because this is the first video I've done with it. There's also a video on these and just kind of showing you the info about the QuadraTiles. So it's a tile shape and it has 4 holes in it. And when you're looking at it, it's a checkmate design that is going to be size-wise 6 millimeter. And thickness-wise, you're looking right about a Tila thickness. So if you're kind of comparing the beads when you're looking at them. 4 holes sit right along the top, and we're going to play up and use those 4 holes as we make this Mardi Gras colored Box bracelet. In addition to our QuadraTiles, which I'm using the purple matte metallic suede color, you are going to be using some 11/0s. You're going to be using an 8/0 color, a 15, and a 3 millimeter or a 4 millimeter bead. That's kind of up to you. And I'm also closing off my project with a cup button. So color-wise, in addition to that purple QuadraTile, I'm going to be using a light violet AB cup button, and it gives that nice kind of shimmer and shine, a little pizzazz for my Mardi Gras inspired colors. The 11/0s that I'm using are galvanized silver as well as the chartreuse AB color, and that's a transparent chartreuse. A great color to have both in 11s and 8s. I'm just using the 8s for this project. Are the transparent topaz AB. I really love how this matches a ton of different colors. And this color was actually suggested by one of our customers for us to get in an order, and I've loved it. If you do have color suggestions too, let us know and we'll get them in for you. The 15/0 that I'm using just adds a little brightness to my project, and this is the lime lined AB in the 15/0. And then as far as the 3 millimeter, I'm using this Pacific color here, this metallic Pacific, and that's the 3 millimeter bead that I'm working with here. It's got that great aquamarine kind of color pop to it. You could use a 4 millimeter or a 3 millimeter when you're working. That's up to you as far as what size you want to work with. If you do want a 7 1/4 inch bracelet, which would just be with your cup button as your clasp, you're going to be using about 45 tiles. In addition to the 45 tiles, 1 strand will do you of the 3 millimeters if you're getting them from us, but it's going to be 44 of your 3 millimeter beads that you're working with in order to get a 7 1/4 inch bracelet. I have a small wrist, so I usually make them a little bit smaller than that, but we'll continue and we'll go on as we make our fun Box bracelet in my fun Mardi Gras colors. So to get started, what I've done is I've put a stop bead on a 5-foot section of my beading thread, and I've added a needle to that thread. About 5 feet is a good length that you'll be able to do your entire project. Because we're going to go up and back this project, we're going to be adding the clasp on as we make it, and I've only left about 2 inches after my stop bead in order to just tie a knot with that tail. So the stop bead I put on is an 11/0 that's not used in this project, and I've gone through that 2 times, exposing the thread on the side and making that bead stop the other beads that I put on. So I'm going to add my first QuadraTile, and it doesn't matter what hole you pick it up at first. I'm going to add one of my 8/0s. I'm going to add another QuadraTile, and I'm going to let them all fall back next to my stop bead. What I'm going to do now is basically go across the top of the second QuadraTile, adding 2 15/0s, an 11/0, and 2 15/0s. I'm then going to take that and go down the other side of that same QuadraTile, going through the next hole. That's going to create that X pattern kind of decorating the top. I'm going to pull nice and tight, and that's going to tighten up the thread there that's on the bottom. Those first tile that I had on, that first QuadraTile, those first 2 holes are going to remain empty until I come back on my project. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another 8/0 and another QuadraTile. And this project is going to be mirror image, so what's ever done on one side is also going to be done on the other side. So after I add that third QuadraTile, on go 2 15-0s, an 11, and 2 15-0s. Then I'm going to go from the first hole to that second hole of that QuadraTile, going right up through the second hole. When I'm coming out the top then, that's going to be the middle of the bracelet. I want to tighten that up. I'm always going to be tightening up as I put on QuadraTiles, because basically those are going to sit to the side here, and I'm going to make sure I don't have a ton of extra thread that is showing. Next, I'm going to put on my next 8-0 and my next QuadraTile and let that drop down. So as you're building, basically what we're going to be doing is going down one side of the QuadraTile, just picking up the holes towards the bottom of the project. Then when we come back through the top, I'm going to pick up those second holes that are closer to, and that's going to make my little X pattern on top of the QuadraTiles. So again, whenever I'm coming out of one of the tiles towards the top, on go 2 15s, an 11 and 2 15s, I'm going to sew down towards the middle of the project. Once I'm coming out towards the middle, I'm going to tighten it up, add on an 8-0, add on another QuadraTile, let those all drop down towards my project. Then I'm going to add my 2 of my 15-0s, my 1 11, my 2 15s, and I'm going to sew through the next hole of the QuadraTile. So I'm always going laterally on the QuadraTile. I'm never going in a cross section, because what that's going to form is that's going to form a triangle. And I don't want a triangle formed. I just want, or I'm sorry, a diamond formed. I just want that squared look. So I want to make sure that I'm always going across the QuadraTile. Give a nice tight pull, and you can see it's starting to take shape. And you're just going to continue that nice easy pattern, adding an 11-0, a QuadraTile, I'm sorry, 8-0, a QuadraTile, 2 15s, an 11 and 2 15s. Let that drop down next to your project. Sew through the QuadraTile right across laterally. Give a nice tight pull and do the same thing over and over again. Right now it's going to be a little bit slinky-ish. That'll get tightened up as we build the next row. So you're going to continue this the whole way for the length of your bracelet. So I've come the whole way down now, adding the beads up and down. You can see on the one side it looks complete. If you flip it over here, you'll see all the empty holes and the whole empty side that just has the QuadraTile sitting up. So there it looks full. Here it looks pretty empty with those empty holes all facing in one direction. When you're talking about fit, it's going to shrink just a little bit. I have a rather tiny wrist, but I'm going to make it so I've made my base so that my ends touch, basically. Because it does stretch and has a little bit of that accordion stretch. We're going to take care of that when we add in our 3mm beads, but you do want to realize that it's going to shrink just a tiny little bit, so you want them to about touch. I'm at the point now where I'm going to reverse and come back the other way, pick up these empty holes on the other side. And what I'm going to do is attach my cup button right here on this side. So I'm going to take one of my 8-0s, and then I'm going to take a bunch of my 11-0, or sorry, 2 of my 11-0s. Getting carried away here, I'm thinking loop end. I'm going to take my 2 11-0s. I'm going to put on my cup button. And what that's going to do is the cup button is pretty much just going to sit right over top of the project. Next, I'm going to be adding an 11, an 8, and an 11, and I'm going to go down the other side of my cup button. And this violet AB cup button has a nice pretty look to it with this here. On the other side, on go 2 of my 11s, 1 of my 8s, and I'm going to go to the other hole of that QuadraTile. So I'm coming out the back end of the QuadraTile. Again, that's going to sit the button right on the top there. Coming out the other side of the QuadraTile, and now I'm going to get ready to go down the project in the opposite way. So here's where I'm going to create that X pattern. On my needle are going to go 2 11-0s, or sorry, 2 15-0s. I'm going to go through the 11-0 from the other side, and then I'm going to add 2 more 15-0s. Go down the QuadraTile, and at this point I'm done adding QuadraTiles. I'm just going to be adding seed beads. Go down the QuadraTile there, give a nice tight pull to get that X design. It is going to sit up just the tiniest little bit because we're going to come back and grab that one that's sticking up. When I'm out the bottom there, I'm going to add on one of my 8/0 beads. So down through the next QuadraTile, making sure not to get twisted or caught there. When I'm coming out the other side, I'm going to flip it over. On go my 2 15/0s, just like I did on the previous side. Pick up the 11 and share it. 2 more 15/0s. Down through the QuadraTile. When I come out the other side, that has made the X on that side. Come out the other side here, add another 8. Go up the QuadraTile. And I'm going to continue adding my X's. 2 15/0s, join the 11. 2 15/0s, down the QuadraTile. When I'm in the middle between the two tiles, that's where I'm going to be adding my 8/0 seed bead. And continuing to the next QuadraTile. I'll show you now here. See, it's tightening up a little bit. It still has some of that spring, but you're going to end up with the X's on both sides. So I have the X there, X here, and I'm getting ready to form my 4th X on this next QuadraTile here, adding 2 15s, grabbing and sharing the 11 from the other side, if it wants me to. And once I have that 11 grabbed and shared, I'm going to come back here, add 2 more 15/0s, come down the QuadraTile. When you're coming down after you make that X, that's where you always add in the 8/0, and then hit up the next QuadraTile. And that's just going to continue the whole length of your bracelet. Once I get to the end, we're going to make our loop, and then we'll come back and we'll add our 3mm
So just
beads.
to show you as I'm progressing, here is the two sides and my X is forming. And it's getting a lot more stable with those two sides and a lot more slinky up here where the one side is just covered. It still is going to have that little bit of the accordion move to it. And then by the time we add the 3mm in between, then we will kind of get that bracelet stabilized. So right now we are just playing around with it and working with doing our X's. So I'm adding my last little X on there, and I'm going to be coming down next to the first tile that was put on, next to the stop bead. I'm going to add my 8/0 seed bead going through to the bottom of the tile here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically decorate the bottom of the tile in addition to putting on the clasp. So I'm going to grab my 2 15s, my 1 11, my 2 15s, and I'm going to go from that bottom hole to the very last hole. When I'm coming out the top then, in that empty area, is when I'm going to add my loop. So I'm going in here, I'm going to add one of my 8/0s, and I'm going to add about 26 of my 11/0s after the 8/0. This is how I'm going to make my loop to keep my bracelet on. And about 25, 26 beads are a good number to go around that cup button if you are using a cup button. I'm going to keep putting those beads on. You can do a peyote stitch if you want. That's up to you. I'm just going to put my beads on, get my loop ready. Once I have my beads on, I'm going to add another one of my 8/0s. I'm going down that QuadraTile, that same one on the other side, and that's going to create that loop that I need for my cup button to sit through. When I'm out the back side here, on go 2 of my 15/0s, I'm going to go through the 11/0 that I just put on, and then I'm going to add 2 more 15/0s. After I add those 2 15/0s, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to remove my stop bead. Let those 15/0s drop down, and then I'm going to take those 2 ends and I'm going to tie them together.
I'm not going to glue or anything. I'll do that after the fact. So all I'm doing is 2 knots to hold that end there. You want to make sure too that those knots don't go over top of your seed beads. So you want to make sure you get your last X there without it going over top of your seed beads. Now what I'm going to do is go back up to the top, going through that last quadrilental right next to the knot, through the 8-0 that I put on, and through my first 2 15-0s on the same side of that 8 of that second QuadraTile. When I come out the top here, I'm going to go through the 11-0 that's there at the top of that QuadraTile, and then what I'm going to do is get ready to add my 3mm beads, connecting all my QuadraTiles on the one side. Then we're going to come back, add the other side, and reinforce my clasp. So to come down the sides, when you're coming out the 11-0s, what we're going to do is we're going to put on a 15-0, an 11-0, and our 3mm. It's going to be followed with the 11-0, the 15-0, and then you're going to sew through the next 11-0 right down the line, catching the next middle of that X. And that's going to start that party of fun, adding that green and that blue tint of the Mardi Gras. And again, we're going to add a 15, 11, our 3, our 11, our 15, and back through the next one. So you're just going right along the edge, creating these little semi-loops. So now we're going to come right down the side here, adding in the 3mm beads. We're going to pick up some of that blue and green for that Mardi Gras look, and what we're going to do is we're going to add an 11-0, our blue 3mm here, another 11-0, and pick up the 11-0 that's at the middle of our X. Now I get to add in the fun Mardi Gras colors, and I'm going to be adding in the 11s and the 3mm. So I'm going to be using this chartreuse AB, and I'm going to add one of those in the 11. I'm adding my 3mm bead and my other 11-0 on the other side. When I'm coming out the 11 here, I'm going to grab the next 11-0 that sticks up from the next QuadraTile, continue adding an 11, a 3, and an 11, down to the next silver 11-0 of the QuadraTile. And I'm just going to continue this the whole length of the bracelet, adding an 11-0, my 3mm 11-0, picking up that next little 11-0 from the X that sits right on top of the QuadraTiles. And we're just continuing down the one side. And then we're going to reinforce the clasp and continue down the other side. And I have those beads then popping out the sides there. And we're going to keep going. So I've gotten to the end of this row here, and I just wanted to show you before I get to my second side. Here's what the first side looks like. It has that nice kind of little tightening effect going on, and that's why I said you want to make it a little bit bigger, because remember my ends touched, and now when I'm working with it here, I'm going to have it be pretty much the exact right size as I'm working with it now that it is tightened up. So it does lose a good about a ½ inch when you're working with it and you're adding that clasp, because the clasp is going to add about a quarter to a ½ inch. When I get to the end and on my last row here, what I'm going to do is actually reinforce the button and kind of help with that little space and that little loop that's in there, because I want this button to sit right like that. So rather than have it hanging out there on the side, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add an 11-0, another one of my blues, an 11-0, and I'm going to go up into the cut button, going through the 11-0s, coming out the top there. I'm going to sew right along through the 11-0 and down the other side. When I come out the back, I'm going to grab the 11-0s that are there, and then coming out the 11-0s, I am going to add an 11-0 in that chartreuse color, and I'm going to be picking up then that 4mm bead. Once I do that, It gets it nice and tight, and it has that nice effect then. Because really this bracelet, the button kind of sits to the side. The bracelet's going to flip all around when you're working on it. That reinforced the bracelet. And what I'm going to do now is basically get to this side. To do that, I'm going to go through the 11-0 on the other side of the 4 that I just added, or that I just went through. I'm going to drop down the 15s and through to my QuadraTile here. So I'm going through the middle of the QuadraTiles. I'm pulling out. I'm going to go through the 15-0s here. I want to sew then through that 11-0. And just to superficially hold the thread there, because I'm coming back down the other way, I'm going to go through one of my 15-0s on the side, go back through my 11-0s. It'll have a tiny bit of thread on the side with my green thread. You won't see it at all. If you want to, you can go down the QuadraTile here, back up here, and around. On this side then, I'm going to repeat what I did on the other, adding my 11, my 3mm, and my 11, and sewing right along the line of the 15-0s. And as you do this too, it's going to pull the whole bracelet together. And I'm going to keep adding. If you get to the point also, I'll show you that if you got to the point that you're getting done your bracelet, which I always suggest that if you're going to watch a video, it's a good idea to watch the video almost the whole way through before you actually start your project. It gives you a really good idea of where you're going and also where you've been, basically. But it's going to give you an idea exactly how you're going to work the beads together. So I'm having my 11-0s go on in between my 3mm. I'm sewing straight down the line. And on the other end, if you do get to the point that your bracelet is a little low or a little small, what I can do is I can show you how to make an extra loop onto your bracelet, and that way it can be added to that end to do a bigger loop in case your bracelet does end up being too small. Now that I'm coming out the last 11-0 here, I'm going to show you how I reinforce the clasp. Also, again, if your bracelet did shrink up too much on you and you're not quite able to put it on, I'll show you how to make the loop for that. For the reinforcement, what we're going to do is we're going to go through 15-0s right after the 11-0. Doesn't matter which side. And I'm going up through all of my seed beads that are part of my loop. As I get to the top, and you're going to kind of hold your loop even there, as I get to the top, I want to pick the last 3 beads that are at the top of my loop. So I want those 3 beads sitting right there, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to go through those 3 beads, and I'm going to come out right after those 3 beads. I go through those 3 11-0s there, coming through. I'm going to start making a second loop. So you can go in right here. And this is a good way to make an extender chain basically out of your seed beads as well. I'm going to add another 20 beads here. And once I have those 20 beads, I'm going to basically circle around, making that extender. And you can reinforce this as well. So I add those beads. You can then circle around those last 3 beads that you came out of and make your loop. And you can see I need to add a couple more beads here. It's not going to be quite big enough. I tend not to count because I'm talking while I'm making the loop. So I'm not counting right offhand. So I'm going to add those extra beads. I'm going to make my loop, go back through those 3 beads. I'm going to circle back through the entire loop that I just made. And that's going to reinforce this extender loop. I'm going through this entire loop again. Again, coming back down then on the other side. And I flipped it over in my hand. Once I'm coming through the other side, I'm going to go back through those 3 that I originally was coming out of and back down the original loop at the base of the bracelet. Once I'm through there, I'm going to come out the 11-0 right before the 8-0 bead. So now that has my 2 loops that I can do my extender chain out of. When I'm coming out here, I'm going to also anchor this one here to the top of my bracelet on the other side, adding my 11-0. I need to dump a couple more out.
I have my 11-0 in my green color. I add my 3mm bead and my 11-0. I'm going to go up through the 11 that I was just coming out, that last bead there. That's going to pull the loop back. You can go through the 11 and the, oops, I went through one too many bead. Just going through the 11-0. I'm going to go down through 15-0s, through the QuadraTile. I'm going to go to the other side of the QuadraTile and up. Right in there, coming out the top. My thread's just going to run along the base of the bottom. You're not going to see it. I want to go through those 15-0s, coming out the 11-0. So I'm basically just circling around, going through the 11 and the 3, and then adding an 11-0 in the other color, picking up the loop from the other side, and going back through. If you want, you can enforce this again. You can tie off your thread, but that's going to kind of pull that together. And then that'll give you the option to wear it at a couple different sizes. So you can wear it there at the bigger size, and you can wear it at the smaller size. A cute idea is to add a little fringe here at the end, so that way if you are wearing it on the smaller size, that way that loop doesn't show. You can also add peyote to your loops. That's a good idea to get that look. But that way, that's a great idea for an extender chain that if you are using or making a bracelet that you're not sure the length of the person's wrist, this gives them some options that they can work with as they're wearing their bracelet. So that's going to finish off the bracelet. Again, I'm just going to bring my thread and needle back to my starter side here, and I can glue down when I'm working on it and play around with the design if you want a little bit. If you want your beads to sit a little bit further apart, you can add 15-0s after or before the 11-0s, or even before the 3mm bead. That'll separate out and make that accordion a little bit further of the X box. So when you're looking at it here in this fun Mardi Gras colors, getting ready to celebrate Mardi Gras, we are going to basically tie off the end and you have your bracelet completed. The bracelet will roll around a little bit, but it does sit higher in the middle. It may roll to the side and it may kind of stick up, but usually when you're wearing it, it's going to sit kind of nice and flat when you're working on it. And if you are working on it and using a cut button, you can do that extender chain. You cannot, that's kind of up to you. Shrinkage wise, again, you do want to make your base a little bit larger so you don't have that small issue that you're going to have to add an extender chain to it. If you get a chance, you can pick up some of these QuadraTiles. They're fun to work with. You could even just do a single layer, basically looking at the top there row. And you could play around adding 11-0s in between the middle instead of the 8-0s. That's going to shrink it more. You could add 6-0s in between. There's just enough room for that as well. So have fun playing around with these QuadraTiles. And if you get a chance, you can visit our bead stores. If you can't get to one of our stores, you can always shop with us online. The contents for this bracelet are going to be listed underneath the show more if you drop down on that. Also, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get fun updates whenever we do new videos. You can also follow us on Facebook and check out the website, PotomacBeads.com. Thanks a lot for watching and have fun making this Xbox bracelet.